¿Quieres aprender un acento mexicano en español? Pues estás en un buen lugar. Yo soy el gringo más mexicano que vas a conocer en tu vida. Well, I don't know, maybe. Hasta los mismos mexicanos me confunden por ser mexicano. So in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you how to speak Mexican Spanish with such a good accent that even Mexicans would be like, are you Mexican or do you have a Mexican family? I'm Nate. I've been learning Spanish for more than 11 years now. I live in Mexico. I have a Mexican girlfriend. And oftentimes, native Spanish speakers, even native Mexican Spanish speakers, think that I am Mexican. The number one reason why is because of my accent. So in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you how to achieve that really authentic Mexican accent. La primera cosa que tenemos que hacer es enfocarnos en los sonidos de las vocales. So we need to focus on the vowel sounds. I say it time and time again in almost every single one of my videos, how important it is to master the vowel sounds in Spanish, okay? A, E, I, O, U. A, E, I, O, U. Remember that the vowel sounds in Spanish are a bit more abrupt. So you're not saying a, e, I. It's abrupt. A, e, I, o, u. Okay? A, e, I, o, u. As English speakers, we tend to elongate sounds, but try to keep them more abrupt. A, e, I, o, u. Now, I thought I should include some words that we use here in Mexico. So here's a tricky one. Do you know what this is? Huitlacoche. Huitlacoche. Huitlacoche is a fungus that grows on corn, actually. And it's very popular here in Mexico. People eat it all the time with quesadillas. They're very good. Typically they salt them, so it's a bit of a strong flavor. But if you come to Mexico, I highly recommend you try huitlacoche. But notice how I underlined the vowel sounds. So the number one way that you're going to have a native accent in Spanish is to focus on the vowel sounds. I try to keep everything very simple for my students because it kind of drives me nuts when I go online and I see all these different methods and strategies and tables and formulas to speak Spanish with a better accent. But the reality is, when you are speaking with people, you're not going to think, oh yeah, it's this combination of letters, or oh yes, this is a vowel, this is a consonant. You're going to get confused. Just make it simple. Focus on these, the vowels. A, E, I, O, U. If you can just focus on that when speaking, your accent is going to sound much better. Okay, so it's not huitlacoche, right? It's huitlacoche. All I'm doing is focusing on the vowel sounds, okay? Huitlacoche, all right? Or how about the word aguacate? Aguacate, meaning avocado. In Spanish, the word for avocado is not avocado. No, it's aguacate. And actually, this word comes from Nahuatl, a language here spoken here in Mexico. People here still speak it, not as many people as before, of course. And fun fact, there are more than 67 languages in Mexico. An interesting story is one time I was in Oaxaca, I was on the coast, living up the beach bum life, and I went to a taco stand, and a guy was sitting there, and he was on the phone, and for some reason I was like, why can I not understand this guy's Spanish? It's because he was speaking Zapoteco, a native language, and get this, he was speaking Spanish at the same time. So just like we have Spanglish, he was speaking Sapoñol, a mixture of Zapoteco and Español. The word aguacate, coming from Nahuatl, actually originally is aguacatl, with an L at the end, aguacatl. And this actually means not only avocado, but also testicle. Fun fact with Nate. Okay? Now, la palabra rojo. Rojo. Now, notice how that R is rrr, rolled. Okay? When a word starts with a singular R, we're going to roll it in Spanish. This can also happen when the R is in the middle of a word and sometimes at the end of a word. So, in the middle of a word, kind of in the middle, like a word alrededor. For example, alrededor. When we have that kind of combination of the L and the R, we'll typically roll it. Alrededor. Okay? Or, I put it here, oftentimes, native Mexican Spanish speakers will kind of subtly roll the singular R at the end of a word. Not all the time, and like I said, it is a bit more subtle. So it's not as strong as something like in the word perro, for example. But I might say something like hablar, hablar. It's very, very subtle, okay, when people are speaking, okay? But rojo, rojo, rosa, I don't know what else. We're going to roll that singular R, okay? So we have pero and we have perro. Now, I've noticed that yes, a lot of students, of course, struggle with the rolling of the R's, but I find that oftentimes students struggle with a singular R more than they do with the rolling of the R. It can be tricky, especially when you're speaking fast. All you need to do is take your tongue, and when you say the word like pero, the tongue comes up really fast. It hits the top of your mouth and it comes right back down, okay? Pero. All right, it hits it, pops right back down. This will take some practice. You can practice, do some practice exercises with singular R's, okay? But pero, okay? Versus perro, okay? To roll your R's, touch that bump at the top of your mouth. That's what we call the alveolar ridge. You can also call it the alveolar trill. It's the rolling of the R. So you're either going to push your tongue forward or backward, and you're going to blow out air. You're not going to push that bump too hard. It just kind of touches it, okay? Okay, so when you find that sweet spot, right, you're going to be going forward or backward. You blow out, and then you'll be able to roll it. My student Elise, when she first joined my academy, within the first 7 days, she learned how to roll her R's just by following what I just told you and doing some practice exercises. So if you can't roll your R's, there is hope. Okay? All right, now, the words vivir and bebé have the same pronunciation of the V and the B. Remember, in Spanish, B and V are pronounced exactly the same. Sometimes a V in Spanish will sound like a V in English. It'll have that kind of V sound. But 99% of the time, B and V make the same sound. So this word is not vivir. That is incorrect. It is vivir. That soft B sound, okay? Vivir, okay? Obviously, bebé is pronounced with the B sound as well, bebé. But make sure when you're saying V's in Spanish that you're not saying vivir. No, it's vivir, okay? Very important to understand. I share this story all the time. When I was in the state of Chiapas here in Mexico, I saw a sign that said vestidores, written with a B instead of a V, which is the correct way to write that word. Or one time I saw the word adobo, written with a V instead of with a B, which would be the correct spelling, okay? So even native Spanish speakers are flipping these, okay? B and V make the same sound in Spanish, okay? I'm going to move over, yeah. Am I? I don't know. That's fine. Okay, next, with the C's, Z's, and S's in Spanish in Mexico, you're going to make a snap sound, like a snake, okay? So we have cero, cero, right? Cero. Same thing with the word zapato. It is not zapato. That is incorrect. It is zapato. Now, in Spain, they speak Castellano, which is just Spanish coming from Spain, and they would say zapato, right? They turn the Z's and the S's oftentimes into the TH sound. Whereas in Mexico, we are just going to keep it as an S, okay? Zapato, not zapato. That's incorrect. You don't say azúcar. No, you say azúcar, okay? Actually, the word azúcar and many words that have Z's in them come from Arabic. So a word like, or a phrase like ojalá, almohada, azúcar. These are all words coming from Arabic. And it's pretty cool when we think about the history of the language, right? We had the Iberian Peninsula, and we had Arabic-speaking rulers come. They conquered the Iberian Peninsula. They did it in about 7 years. Then it took the Spaniards and the Catholic rulers over 400 years to reconquer everything, right? La Reconquista. Which is why in the north of Spain, you're going to see less influence of, Muslim rulers. So you're not going to see as much Arabic, supposedly, words. But also in the architecture especially, you're going to see way more architecture with intricate designs and all that in the south of Spain. Whereas in the north of Spain, you're going to see more faces and things like that in the architecture. Because with the Islamic rulers, with Islam, you're not allowed to show faces or any human representations in your artwork or in your architecture. So that's why in the south of Spain, you're going to see lots of very interesting, beautiful, intricate architecture. That's all because of the influence of the Arabic-speaking rulers of the time. Fun fact with me. Okay, but what about this? What's going on here with this pa and ta bien? Well, it's very common that Mexican Spanishers will kind of cut words up. They'll shorten them. So instead of saying para, I might just say pa. So for example, es para ti, es pa ti, all right? If I'm trying to speak quickly, I can just say, sí, güey, es pa ti. I don't know why I made that so dramatic, but you get the idea, okay? es para ti, es para ti. All right, kind of when we're speaking faster. All right, instead of saying está bien, we can just say está bien. Okay, just the TA. Using those two will honestly make you sound really good. So try that out. Okay, niño, right? We have the ñ, which makes an N and a Y sound put together. So like in the word niño, right? Niño. It's like the N and the Y put together. Niño. Or in the word español, right? Español. Okay? Now, my two final tips for you are if you really want to have a perfect Mexican Spanish, you need to be patient. I've been learning Spanish for 11 years now. I've lived in Mexico for 2. I've been listening to Mexican music for many, many years now. I've been speaking Spanish for years and years and years with Mexican Spanish speakers. And a big reason why you're hearing the accent that I have now in Mexican Spanish, with my Mexican Spanish, is simply due to osmosis. Okay? Why does someone who grows up in Alabama speak different than someone who speaks different from someone who grows up in California? It's just the environment that you're in. So if you are speaking Spanish with a Colombian teacher and you're expecting to speak Mexican Spanish, you're probably just going to latch onto the Colombian accent whether you realize it or not. So I always recommend students, when you do what I just talked about, right, focusing on the vowel sounds, knowing when to roll the R's, B and V, those kinds of things, when you combine that with osmosis, aka being in an environment that is conducive to you always hearing Mexican Spanish, over time, your brain will just kind of pick up those sounds and you'll start to speak more Mexican, you could say. And the final thing I want to say is just speak. Habla. The more you speak, the better you're going to get and the faster you're going to improve. When I started speaking Spanish every single day, my Spanish started to improve much faster, not to mention my accent. So be patient, enjoy the process, surround yourself, put yourself in an environment with Mexican Spanish. When you're driving to work, listen to Mexican Spanish. Before you go to bed, listen to Mexican music, so on and so forth. Watch Mexican YouTubers or Netflix shows. You get the idea. Imagine if you grew up in Mexico, what your life would look like. Well, you'd wake up, you'd be hearing Mexican Spanish, you'd be speaking Mexican Spanish with people, you'd be consuming Mexican media. Try to create that environment, wherever you may be, okay? Bueno, nada. Muchas gracias por escuchar y ver este video. Click the link in the video description if you want to join my Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. We have more than 200 students, and I promise you when you join, you will get results. Our promise is to help you have a 10-minute conversation in 90 days without feeling unconfident. So check it out by clicking the link in the video description. Muchas gracias y espero que tengas buen día. Hasta luego.